Welcome to Mpowered Living. I'm Sheu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Mpowered Living. I'm your host, Sheu, and my guest today is Teresa Sande. Teresa is an executive coach, leadership expert, and author of Find Your Fierce, where she helps high-achieving leaders understand and move through imposter syndrome with more confidence, clarity, and self-trust. What makes this conversation so helpful is that it centers around something so many successful, accomplished people experience: that quiet fear that maybe they're not as capable as everyone thinks they are. In this episode, we talk about why imposter syndrome often shows up at moments of achievement, why external success doesn't always quiet internal doubt, and how perfectionism, overworking, and constant feedback can keep people stuck in patterns that don't actually serve them. Teresa also shares practical tools for interrupting that inner voice, including how to ask, what if that's not true? And how leaders can create more space, awareness, and trust, both for themselves and the people they lead. This conversation is practical, encouraging, and one I think so many high-achieving people will deeply resonate with. Let's dive in. Teresa, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Ann.
All right, let's dive in because I've got so much I want to cover. I know that imposter syndrome affects so many high-achieving, accomplished people. Why do you think it is that high achievers are especially vulnerable to this idea, this imposter syndrome?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say imposter syndrome is really sneaky because it really does strike at points of high achievement. And most people misunderstand it and think, oh, it's a lack of confidence. It's for people who are faking it till they make it kind of thing. But it's actually usually people who are quite successful, quite smart, quite accomplished, quite driven, very responsible. And it's when that light gets shined on you and all of a sudden that voice pops up and says, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, or what if I can't, sustain this level of performance? So ironically, it's when you get the award, it's when you get the promotion, it's when, you've been recognized for your expertise and you're kind of out there in the spotlight that we experience it the most. And you're right. Latest statistics say about 82% of all people have said that they've experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their.
Why is it that this external success is not quieting the internal self-doubt?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few thoughts that I have on this, right? There's a bunch of theory around imposter syndrome. And then I like to connect dots on some of those theories and things that I've seen play out. My background is corporate America, and I've just spent so much time with really successful, high achieving leaders who have shared with me, in our coaching sessions and different things that they also are experiencing imposter syndrome. And the part of the reason, there's a couple things. We do seek external validation. And let's just take the demographic of people in corporate America. We get a lot of feedback. We get performance reviews. Yeah. Everyone else is assessing our performance. And if we're not careful, that can bridge over into, well, now they're assessing my worth. And they're saying, if I'm good enough or I'm not good enough. And we often spend our lives trying to achieve a bar that someone else set for us. Someone else is saying what good looks like, what success looks like. And so not surprisingly, we are very extrinsically motivated for those data points. It's when we can look internally or find intrinsic value that we can quiet imposter syndrome or the negative voice or the negative self-talk, whichever, however you want to categorize it. But another theory or thought process that I like to connect is that we spend a lot of time helping people and leaders say self-awareness is good, right? We talk about high EQ and we should try to be as self-aware as we can. I subscribe to that as well. I believe that. The higher levels of self-awareness, the more we are focused on our impact on other people, we are taking in data points, we are checking with people on if we're okay and how it's going. So there's also a connection of higher emotional intelligence,
Mm.
higher self awareness can lead to higher levels of imposter syndrome because we're taking in all of these external data points. Like the thing that everyone says do really well can sometimes feed imposter syndrome. So it's sort of an interesting
Wow.
intermix there.
What a conundrum.
It really is, right? Because what's the answer? Stop taking feedback, become less self aware. That is not what I'm saying at all. It's not what I'm saying at all. But when I talk to people about this, it really is about just acknowledging and noticing what does imposter syndrome look like or feel
Mm.
like for you
Mm.
so that you don't let it go unchecked. You don't let it live rent free in your brain or start telling you things that we start to believe, right? Because it's actually not the truth. It's
Yeah.
just a voice.
What are some of the most common ways that you've seen imposter syndrome show up? Like, what does it look like and feel like for many people?
Yeah, it's usually not like a friendly big banner that says imposter syndrome, right? It's usually more like anxiety, general feelings of I'm not measuring up, this feeling of there's a shoe that's going to drop, right? I was really good at what I was doing, but now they're going to find out that I'm not
Mm.
as good as everyone seems to think I am.
Yeah.
We start imposing a lot of taxes on ourselves, like we overwork. We try to be perfect. Perfectionism doesn't exist. Well, I should say perfection doesn't exist. Perfectionism is often alive and well for
Yeah.
people. And so it's this battle that we're constantly, up against where we're really overworking, overanalyzing. If you're a manager, maybe you're micromanaging your team's deliverables because you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't let this go. I can't slip. The spotlight's on me, right? So I never diagnose anyone with imposter syndrome. That's not my job. I just try to raise awareness for people because if those things are happening, it's worthwhile to examine, okay, am I experiencing this, And there are things you can do if you are experiencing it. So to me, awareness is the biggest secret weapon here is to just notice that it's happening. Tune into
Yeah.
it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that word because you use the word diagnose. So when I think about someone diagnosing themselves with imposter syndrome, talk to me about this idea of like when you do something hard and you're pushing yourself out your comfort zone, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel like maybe you're a fish out of water, right? But that's important for growth. Like you got to do the hard thing. You got to push yourself if you want to have those growth moments. How do we distinguish between that and what is truly imposter syndrome and self doubt and just thinking, okay, I can't do this?
Yeah. So a couple things I would say, right? If you're noticing the voices, gosh, this is really uncomfortable. This is hard. I don't know if I can be successful yet. That's actually a pretty healthy growth mindset,
Mm.
saying, I'm not sure if I can do this yet, which is very different than, okay, I tricked everyone. I fooled them into thinking I was smarter than I am. And now I'm going to get found out. That is a very, almost like a fatalist kind of mindset, right? It's very closed and it's in the space of, I didn't actually earn this. I didn't deserve this. And they're really two distinctions because you're right. I mean, if we're driven and high achieving, we're going to be outside of our comfort zone. And a lot of people who experience imposter syndrome spend time outside of their comfort zone, not because of imposter syndrome, but because they're driven and they're high achieving and they're very successful in their own right. So that's one part of the equation. It's when we can't internalize the success. It's when we can't see that these are things I did that contributed to this success, that it wasn't just luck. I tell so many of my clients, I'm like, leadership is not a charity. If you weren't performing, you wouldn't be here, right? I mean, we know this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of taking a pause and saying, wait, what do I know to be true? Because there's a story going on in my head right now that is not serving me very well. And it's really actually incorrect. We're not looking at the factual data points, which is I worked hard, I achieved this thing, the light was shined on me, and I deserve to be here.
Oh, that's great. So when we think about what practical shifts could help people really prevent imposter syndrome from holding them back, what do you see as the most impactful things people can be doing?
Yeah. So a lot of the things, even in my book, that are like, how do you fight imposter syndrome? How do you prevent it from happening? I think it's a mindset shift. To me, I don't think it's about never experiencing imposter syndrome, but it's perhaps shifting our relationship with it. So instead of it, when it pops up, us believing the hype, like, oh, you're not good enough, you just got lucky, you were in the right place at the right time, it's to notice that that's happening and then ask a simple question like, what if that's not true?
Mhm.
What's another possibility?
Mm.
And you just let your brain entertain that thought for a minute, right? Like, well, I am pretty good at what I do. I mean, at the end of the day, I have worked really hard for this. People have given me feedback that these are my strengths. And so if it was anyone else, you would expect they too would get the promotion or they too would win the award. And so it's just kind of normalizing, like, I feel this way, it's happening. Catch yourself, like catch the story and then ask, like, what if that's not true? Is there another possibility of what could be going on right here? And it's my favorite question. It's so incredibly simple. And yet we don't do it because we're busy. We, as humans, we actually seek patterns, right? We seek patterns because that's our comfort zone and it allows us to work fast and it allows us to be really efficient. And that keeps us super closed off to possibilities because we're moving fast. We're sort of on autopilot. And if we can just open the aperture a little bit and allow ourselves some room to stop, pause, reflect a little bit, have a couple of those questions like, what if that's not true? What else is possible? That small shift can make a huge, trajectory change in terms of what I do next and what I allow my brain to keep telling me. It sounds simple, but some of it is just the discipline and the practice of giving yourself some space, like when you feel overwhelmed, or giving yourself the tools to have some time in your day to reflect, to write things down. If you're a journaler, like actually journal. We get so busy doing so many things that we don't give ourselves that time and space, and we need it.
Yeah. So I kind of want to unpack what you just said about like you got to stop and pause and be aware and then reflect. And I think that is all the right things, but how do we break that down even more?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh yeah, of course, if somebody were to like, be able to read my brain and tell me, like physically stop me, but I'm moving a million miles an hour. And so how do I even get to the place where I can do this pattern interrupt and stop? Because it may be happening. I might even be noticing it, but I am in this habit of just like, okay, just keep going, keep moving.
Yeah, I always like to say if this was easy, we would have done it by now, right?
I
Because
know.
I
I
mean,
was
we're smart
hoping you had
people.
a secret little like
Yeah.
magic
Yeah.
wand.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I would say is the solutions might actually be simple, but I never say it's easy.
Yeah.
I have a lot of empathy because, even as I'm coaching people, I sometimes feel like a hypocrite. I'll be coaching someone on something
Mm.
and I'm like, oh, yeah, I need to go back and revisit that advice for myself,
Mhm.
right? Because
Yeah.
we're humans. And so that's the other piece that I would just say is like, what support networks, what support mechanisms do you have in place, right? If
Yeah.
you're in a position to have a coach, that might help you. If it means blocking your calendar to have time in between meetings so that you're not back to back to back, I think the first thing I would tell people is, when are you at your best? Like,
Mm.
when do you feel like you are firing on all cylinders? Is it when you're in nature? Is it when you're outside? Is it, I don't even have to be outside, but I have to see outside?
Mm.
Okay, great, right? Can you block a little time on your calendar to open the blinds? Look outside for a minute. That can be very grounding. I'm a big fan of sticky notes. If you could see my desk right now, I just have sticky notes all over the place. And I put little reminders, like I have this one right here that says burn the candle. That's not going to mean anything to anyone else, but it's very meaningful to me. And it's a reminder to just do that. I've had people come to my talks and workshops and they'll send me a picture of a sticky they have on their desk now that just says, what if that's not true?
Yeah.
So just setting yourself up for success, because you're right. They're not hard. I should say they're not complicated things to
Right.
do, but it's
Right.
hard to do it. because we're busy. The other things, we can have accountability partners. We can have friends that check in on us. You can set an alarm on your phone to remind you to do things. We're all so overscheduled. I think this
Yeah.
is the other thing that I would say. I had an aha moment. I'm a coach, but I also have a coach.
Yeah.
And um, I was talking with him, and he said, Teresa, I think what's happening is you are living by your calendar, and your calendar is telling you what you need to do and when you need to do it versus it being a tool
Mm,
that works for you.
mm.
And of course, I felt really dumb in that moment because I'm like, oh my gosh, my Outlook calendar completely runs my life. He's right. I wasn't using it as the tool that it's there to be, which is design the day, set yourself up for success. But I wasn't doing that, right? I was filling every minute with
Yeah.
everything so I could be uber efficient. But that didn't mean I was effective. And I certainly wasn't, building in time to do these simple but not easy practices that we need to do.
Okay, earlier you used the word hypocrite when you were
Mhm.
talking about like, oh, well, I'm coaching somebody, but then I feel this. Is there a difference between imposter syndrome and feeling hypocritical? Or do you see those as one and the same?
Well, I do think they're different. I'm pausing because I'm like, did I mean it that way? Did I mean that I was really a hypocrite?
Because
Um,
I'm asking for myself because I'm also in the coaching space and
yeah.
a lot of the coaching that we do is with couples and helping them get clear about family values and vision and purpose and legacy. I feel like objectively we do a pretty good job of like practicing what we preach, like using the tools in our own family. But
Mhm.
by no means is our family perfect. There are definitely days where my family got the short end of the stick and they got put on the back burner that day because something blew up at work, right? And so there are those days where I'm like, man, I was like a hypocrite today. I was such a fraud today. Like, how could I
Mm,
be here in front of these people teaching this concept and then go home and I'm short with my kids or I'm
yeah.
distracted and and so is that more imposter syndrome or is that something else?
To me, it's something else. I said hypocrite kind of tongue in cheek a little
Yeah.
bit, and maybe you do too.
Yeah.
I I think the biggest thing is perfection's not the assignment. I don't know where along the way we
Yeah.
ever picked up this thought like of, oh, I read a book and I know the theory, and so now I should apply it perfectly. It's like perfection's never the assignment. The assignment is presence to what we're trying to do. We're trying to be better, and that saying, when we know better, we do better. And that's true. But when we know better, we're not perfect. We just know better. And then now we have to go to work every single day at trying to apply what we've learned. So I think it's more of course there are moments when we say, gosh, we know this, and then we still fall short, or we still, trip up on that curb, whatever it is. And I think I would just say congratulations, you're human. That's just, that's just it's human. That's just human.
Yeah.
Um, so to me, though, imposter syndrome, like the delineation of imposter syndrome is really more this feeling of I'm not as good as everyone is telling me I am or believes that I am. So I would say if you ever felt like, gosh, all these people are hiring me to coach them and coach them as relationship people, but I don't really know what I'm doing and I don't know how to help them and I'm not even trying. That to me is like, oh, hold on a minute. I get
Yeah.
curious about that
Yeah.
because that's perhaps not true, but it's serious nonetheless. Because if that's really what your brain is telling you, there's this theory that says, what we think drives what we do, and what we do drives the result that we get. And then the result that we get further reinforces our thought pattern. So, it's like that old adage, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. Well, part of it is if I think I'm not good at something, then I'm going to like overwork and overanalyze, and I'm going to, beat myself up when I make a mistake, and I'm going to try to be perfect, and, all of those things. And the result will be that I fall short and I'm not perfect because that
Yeah.
was never the assignment. And it will further reinforce, see, I knew it. I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, well, actually, my mindset is there's a difference between knowing and doing. There is a difference between perfection and presence. And if I believe that I'm an evolving human being and I'm doing the right things and I'm putting the left foot in front of the right, then the actions will be, I'm going to put stickies on my desk. I'm going to put reminders on my calendar. I'm going to continue to be the best that I can be and continue to evolve and grow. The outcome will be I get it right a lot of the time, right? Like I'm doing okay. And that further reinforces I don't have to be perfect. I can be good enough. So mindset is such an important part of this. And I know that's a lot of what you talk about in terms of like living an empowered, inspired life. It's like, how do you do that? Right.
Yeah.
And mindset's so core to that.
So, am I hearing you correctly that people who have perfectionist tendencies are more prone to imposter syndrome?
I would not say they're more prone to
Mm.
it. It's not like people ask me this a lot because there have been controversial articles and things written like, oh, so women experience imposter syndrome
Yeah.
more than men. It's like, look, that's a complicated one because women, again, broad brushstrokes, right? What
Yeah.
women tend to talk about things a little bit more. They tend to have higher levels of EQ. It doesn't mean men can't have high levels of EQ, but they tend to have higher levels of EQ. Studies show that they are higher levels of self-awareness. And so these things can lead to more feelings of imposter syndrome. And not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but like imposter syndrome is not an actual medical thing to be diagnosed, right? It is a description of something that is happening. In fact, the researchers that first coined the term did not call it imposter syndrome. It was called imposter phenomenon
Mm.
because there actually wasn't a reason, like a tangible, factual reason why people should feel this way because they were successful and they, were smart and had all of the accomplishments and accolades. So as they studied this human behavior and reaction, they were like, this is a phenomenon because it shouldn't be happening that way. So perfectionism doesn't cause imposter syndrome, just like low self-confidence doesn't cause imposter syndrome, but they're corollary. There's a connection, I would say, in that we see those behaviors highlighted in people who are experiencing imposter feelings or imposter syndrome feelings.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that because I think that's an important distinction to really understand, especially, if we're to kind of dive into what the difference is there and how that shows up in our lives.
Yeah.
When you think about imposter syndrome and how it impacts people specifically in their leadership role, what
Mhm.
do you see as the impact to them as a leader? And what is that ripple effect that it has on teams?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is leaders are people too. So similar to what I've said, it plays out in leadership, right? So if I'm leading a huge department or a huge team and I have these feelings that pop up, like let's say I just got promoted, I'm an SVP of a big department, I've got a big charter, lots of responsibilities, and I've got a really big team. If my mindset pops in that that was just luck,
Mm.
I'm not as good as everyone thinks,
Mhm.
then, you have a choice, right? You can curl up in a ball and just go away from the world, or you can say, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to make sure that this goes well. And so then what do, right? We overwork, we stress ourselves, we stretch ourselves too thin. We overwork our teams. We become pretty demanding. We might not listen to reality of what's happening. It's like, no, we cannot miss this deadline, or no, we have to deliver. All eyes are on us. And there's some truth to that, right? Like all eyes might be on you. It might be high stakes, but the most evolved leaders are the ones that are in tune with what's happening. Again, they're
Mm.
not perfect. Doesn't mean they don't experience these things, but they're able to kind of go, wait, what is happening here? Is
Yeah.
this happening? And um, in my book, I talk about the framework, and it's a 3-part acronym with the word AIM in the middle, framework. And it stands for awareness, interruption, and then momentum. And
Mm.
so leaders that are really effective will go, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I'm feeling a lot of stress. I'm feeling like I'm overworking my team. I'm being a little unrealistic. Okay, I'm aware that it's happening. The second part is interruption. So I'm going to interrupt that. I'm just going to hit pause and I'm going to check in with people. I'm going to check in with myself. I'm going to go for that walk in nature. I'm going to stop the flow of water, whatever the, you
Yeah.
know, negative thing is that's happening. And then momentum is it sounds tricky, like you're just going to hit momentum and propel off into the sunset, but really momentum comes from all of the daily practices, you know, practicing having a growth mindset, practicing being present, having a support network. Could be having a coach. It could be, whatever things you're doing, eating your vegetables, right? So that you're healthy. Imposter syndrome is going to pop up. And when it pops up, you just don't want it to go unchecked and you don't want it to knock you down. So maybe it's a blip, you interrupt it, and then you rely on the work that you've been doing to be a good, strong leader, that you can be. And so I see the ripple effect magnified in leaders because, they typically do have large teams and people following them, and they have a lot of decision rights. And that's not to be wielded without caution, right? There's a big responsibility that comes with that.
Can you talk a little bit about this idea of leaders needing to go first?
Yeah. So there's a lot of work that's been done over the years about, are you a out front leader? Are you a command and control leader? Are you a quiet leader for, leading from the back? And where I kind of landed on this, like the importance of leaders going first, was in response to a lot of work that was being done about servant-based leadership, which I am a huge proponent of, right? To orient yourself as a leader of, I am here to be in service of other people. And it's a privilege to be in a leadership position. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Leaders often will come to coaching sessions or sit at offsites and express a lot of frustration. Like, I don't know why this team just doesn't do X, or I don't know why my peer won't do Y. What I'll often say is, sometimes we want people to do things, but as leaders, we got to go first. We have to role model it. We have to extend the olive branch. We have to schedule the meeting and be like, hey, you know what? It's really important that we talk, Anne. And so as leaders, it's also important that if you're not seeing action, you might have to go first. That doesn't mean do things for other people or take on their responsibilities or, anything like that. But it does mean that you might have to go first. The other component to that is I saw, remember those like successories, those posters that used to go on the wall and they had like inspirational.
Yeah.
I love successories, catalogs, and there was one of this person like, just joyfully jumping off this cliff and into this big lake. And it said something along the lines of, true leadership is jumping off the cliff and trusting that you'll create the water on the way down. And I thought, wow, that's so risky. That's so, like, how do I feel about that? But when you think about it, I mean, many times, leaders are going into some unknown area and they have a vision and they have an idea, but they're creating the water, right? Like they're taking the leap, they're going first, they're hoping people jump with them. And they know they have the accountability and the responsibility to create some water so that we don't all end up at the creek bed at the bottom, right? Like there's a nice soft landing. And so I think that's the other thing that means to me when I, often talk with leaders about needing to go first.
Yeah.
Is trusting your leadership and then blazing the path.
What can leaders do to create that environment where people do feel safe enough to take that risk and follow them off that cliff?
Boy, I think there's a lot of things. There's the creating space for people to ask questions. A lot of times when a leader sets their vision and they're like, hey, this is what we're doing. And then people are like, I have a question. Why? Why are we doing that? Or I have a question. How is that going to work? Right? Leaders are frustrated because they're like, why all the questions? I mean, let's just go. And what I often will tell leaders is, if you think of like the change curve, the classic change curve, the way people move through the change curve is they're actually active. They're not just sitting there with their arms folded and, resisting. They're exploring. And part of that exploration is to get more data, to get more information, because then they can take it in and go, okay, I'm ready to move to the next step, or I'm ready to do the next thing. So for leaders, to create space for people to be curious, to be able to ask questions. When they ask questions, they become part of it. They become part of the vision, and they're not just following out of compliance because the leader told them to. They're really committed to the vision, and maybe they don't know every step along the way, but they're like super committed to what the outcome could be. And leaders, I think, sometimes don't realize how much power they have over creating the conditions for people to be successful. They can't force them to do it, but they can set the table, they can set the tone, they can go first, right? They can do everything in their power to set the conditions for people to rise to the occasion and to, be successful and follow their vision. So I think that that's just a really big part of having people follow you.
Yeah. If you were to kind of like list out, what are some of the things that separate those leaders who are able to inspire the trust and create the followers from those who really struggle to build that trust and followership?
I would say a few things, staying on this theme that we were just talking about, where I was saying you can
Mm,
create followers through compliance, right? Like, here's the rules, follow the rules, and you won't get, a ruler to the knuckles. It's like,
mm,
okay. I mean, I know it's very clear, it's very black and white, but the minute that leader stops explaining the boundaries or isn't there for a day, I mean, people don't stay in the box, right?
yeah.
And so you really want to create that commitment, that buy-in, that there's like some skin in the game and people are part of the solution. And so I think the difference is leaders that fundamentally have a mindset of, I am not the only one with ideas here. I am not the only one that has answers. I might need to go first. I might need to chalk the field and have a vision, but there's a lot of room, and I'm going to make room and I'm going to set an expectation for that room that people are coming with their ideas and their solutions. So often, I think leaders don't mean to shut down
Mm,
innovation or shut down idea generation and brainstorming, but they feel like, I got to be the smartest person in the room. I have to have all the answers. I have to, move quick, and moving quick doesn't look like asking 5 people their opinions. So they kind of shut it down and they're very declarative. And being declarative is almost like the equivalent of command and control.
yeah.
Now, there's so much nuance here. Like, we could have a
Yeah.
whole nother
Right.
session on
I
that. Like,
know.
we could talk about this probably for
I
for
know.
days, because you see this too in the work that you do. But you want, just like leaders need to have open mindsets, they need to have growth mindsets, they need to create conditions for other people to also have that. And that can feel like the opposite of what you want to do in that moment when you're under deadline, trying to move fast, trying to be
Yeah.
specific, right?
Yeah.
So it's a balance. It's not like one end of the spectrum to the other. So I think it's leaders that can really kind of lean into, what does the situation call for right now?
Mm,
And how can I apply the right leadership tools in this moment? And that also, bringing it all the way full circle to what we talked about earlier, like, that also requires time in your day to be
yes.
thinking,
Yeah.
looking like, what is it? Okay, am I ready for this next meeting? Or
Yeah.
am I coming in hot from the last meeting and I'm just charging ahead? So,
Mhm.
are you using the tools available to you to be the most effective leader? Because it's a huge responsibility. It's a huge responsibility that leaders carry.
Yeah. Are you up for some rapid fire questions?
Sure.
What's one thing that you've stopped doing that's made a big difference in your life?
Oh boy. I think one of the things that this is going to sound really crazy, but I stopped picking my fingernail skin. This is like kind of crazy, but it's made a big difference in my life. Okay, so I'll just tell you really quick. What I and again, not perfect. I
Yeah.
sometimes still do it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I used to, like, just absent-mindedly, right? I would, like,
Yeah.
pick, like, your
Yeah. Yeah.
cuticles or whatever, and then it would
Yeah.
bleed. And then
Yeah.
what I noticed was, like, in meetings, I was hiding my hands because they looked
Oh,
awful, right? They looked like they
wow.
got chewed up in, like, a meat grinder or
Yeah.
something. And so it was, like, stifling the way that I was expressing myself, how I felt. Like, it sounds so silly, like a little piece of skin, but, like,
Yeah.
it was really suppressing my
Yeah.
ability to express myself. And I had gone and gotten my nails done, and my nail person was like, "When are you going to stop doing this?" And she gave me the best tip. She's like, "Just wear band-aids on your fingers for like a week." And then the second thing was to buy one of those little, like, cuticle clippers. So, she's like, "You're going to have some dry skin. Clip it. Do not rip it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay." And that, like, little thing, stop doing that, has just really, like, yeah, This is like a very unformed answer and
Yeah,
probably
no, I
not
love
very
it.
eloquent, but that's one thing. It's like really changed how I feel about, myself.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Most impactful book you've read?
Boy, there's a lot. I'm gonna say Tuesdays with Maury. Do you remember this
I
book?
love that
Tuesdays with
book. I love
Yeah.
that book.
It
Yes.
just like it just yeah,
Mitch,
it
Mitch Albom, right?
yes.
Something?
Abram,
Albert. Yeah. Yeah. Abrams.
Mitch Abram.
Yeah.
My husband and I read it on a road trip. We like to, when one person's driving, the other person reads. And it was just one of these books that even as it got into the evening, like it was the one thing that we would flip on the light in the car to keep reading because we were just like so attached to it. And it just like when I go back to it, and I think about it, I'm like, I think that just really, yeah, it's just a really meaningful, impactful book.
A habit that's changed your life.
Habit that's changed my life. I think it was so I am a night owl. I have always been a night owl. And as a kid, all the way growing up, and still to this day, like if left to my own devices on vacation and stuff like that, I'm always the one that's up till like midnight or 1 without much problem. And I'm a long sleeper. So you pair that with, I like to stay up late, and on a good night, like if I'm left alone, I can sleep like 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for so many years in corporate America, like that schedule doesn't look like an executive schedule, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
looks careless and reckless and immature if you're like up at midnight and you're not showing up to meetings until 9 or 10 in the morning. And so for all of those years that I was in corporate America, I changed. I tried to go to bed early and I shifted, those things. About 6 years ago, I started my own business, and I actually went back to allowing myself to be the night owl that I am. And I am very productive late in the day. I am very productive at 9 o'clock at night. And I gave myself permission to sort of rewrite the rules of like, I'm not at my best at 8 a.m. So I'm not going to do meetings at 8 a.m. We can still meet client needs. We can still all do all of those things, but that's not going to work for me. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a habit or if that's but that shift, it really flies in the face of the majority, right? Because, it's like the early bird catches the worm and all those things. It never worked for me. And finally at like 50 years old, I'm like, I'm going to stop doing that. Like, this is silly. I'm going to stop doing that. I am a night owl. I'm probably always going to be a night owl. Night owls unite.
Yeah. It's so funny that you're saying this because literally as I was driving to the office this morning, I was thinking, because I'm exactly the same way. I am a night owl. I am like, I get the kids to bed around 8:30, 8:45, and I can work unchecked. I could work until 2 or 3 easy. No problem, still
Yeah.
high energy. And this morning I was driving to work and I was thinking, what do I need to do to become a morning person? What would it take for me to be one of those people that wakes up at 5 or 6 a.m.? So it's good that you're saying this because it's like, okay, no, I should not try to change my natural hardwiring. Like, let me just be me and figure out, because there's a part of me that's like, gosh, exactly what you said. Like, I'm so irresponsible. Like, why can't I get my crap together and just like wake up early like the other people that I
Everyone
know?
else. Yeah. All the successful people out there. Yeah, it is just, I know that I'm in the minority. Like I know that, the majority of people do figure out either they're early risers by nature. People said if you do it long enough, it just becomes habit. I did it for 27 years. It was never a habit. It just was never a habit. Like, I don't know. So I do love mornings. Like on the rare occasion that I can't sleep or something like that happens and I like look out the window and the sun's coming up, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get why people are morning people because this is beautiful and it's peaceful.
Yeah.
But then I just remind myself like there's beauty at midnight too, walking out and looking at the moon and like seeing the stars or, when there was the northern lights or when, the nighttime eclipse happened. And I was like texting all my friends because it was like 3 a.m. I'm like, it's happening. And they're like, I'm sleeping. Do not text me. I'm like, I'm up, So I think it's just, like learning what works for you and giving yourself permission to do that, not putting the judgment on it.
Okay, what's one thing that creates better relationships?
Oh my gosh. I think it is just communication, which sounds super cliche, but it isn't just clear communication. What I've come to appreciate is like not letting things fester or go on unsaid. Because it's always worse, right? It's always worse when you're like, as an example, you are frustrated by what somebody did and you don't say anything, but it's in your brain.
Yeah.
And then you don't say anything, but maybe you put it subtly in an email, but you didn't really
Yeah.
say what you wanted. And they don't pick up on your subtlety. And in your mind, you're like, well, I've told them. And then they do it again. And you're like, oh, I can't believe they did that. Right. And then we make up this whole story of like, trust gets eroded and people are doing this to me. It's so unhealthy. And I find that so many of those things hinge on just having the respect for yourself and for others to just say what needs to be said,
Yeah.
with compassion and kindness and empathy, and be open to like, maybe it comes out sideways and you need to fix your words or whatever it is, but not doing that
Yeah.
has hurt so many relationships. And I watch people around me just, their relationships suffer. And it like you talked about ripple effect. That, I mean, it erodes trust, it erodes comfort, it erodes love. I mean, there's so many things. And so, for me, I just think it's communication, like real communication.
Okay, 2 more. What's a mindset that people need to let go of?
I just did a post about this on social media the other day. This mindset that feedback is a gift. Which again, people are going to be like, I listened to this podcast and Teresa said I don't need to listen to feedback. That's not what I'm saying. But, we're told feedback is a gift, and it is. It can be. But if we just take every piece of feedback that comes our way and we don't run it through a filter of like, does this actually serve me? Does this fit the situation? We lose sight of the fact that feedback is just someone else's experience and perspective, and they wanted to share it with you. And often they are doing it from a place of well-intending. But if we just take every piece of feedback, the analogy I used is that feedback is like a coat, and we just keep piling these coats on, and pretty soon you're like walking around wearing like 17 coats, and they're all a little different. Because what one person loves about what you're doing, someone else could give you feedback, I don't like that. And if we say, oh, both must be correct, that's a lose-lose situation. So what I tell people is take the gift, thank someone for giving you the gift, but then assess if that gift fits, if it's the right season to wear that coat. Is it, so like this mindset of like, we must take every piece of feedback and do something with it, or we're not being our best selves. If that goes unchecked or unexamined, I think it's super detrimental. So I would say feedback is like a coat, but you can take some coats to Goodwill.
Yeah.
Okay. You can donate those coats.
Okay, last question. What's a question that people should be asking themselves more often?
Am I happy? Like, am I happy? Because so often we're like, am I successful? Am I performing? Am I, doing what someone else wants? And I really have found, maybe you have too, in coaching all these successful people, they literally don't know if they're happy or not. So, maybe something feels off or something feels good, but they don't know why.
Yeah.
And so I think we just have to always be asking ourselves, like, are we happy with what we're doing? Because happiness, as they say, it doesn't come from earning more money or hitting that next promotion, or when I get the different house, or when I get that different car, or when I move to a different state. It's like, are you happy right now? And if you're not, like, go to work on that. Go to work on fixing that. And then you can be happy in your new car, and you can be happy in your new job or in your new state. But like, it comes from within, but also checking in with yourself to say, am I happy? And do the things that you can to get in alignment now to live happy.
Can you share, before we wrap up, can you share a little bit about your book?
Sure. So the book is called Find Your Fierce, and it's all about understanding imposter syndrome. What is it? Where does it come from? Why do we experience it? And then, like I said, that's the first part of the book. And then the second and third part is those interruptions, like quick, in the moment, little tips and tricks that you can do that will help you when you notice imposter syndrome happening, like you're about to get up and give a presentation. It's like you can short circuit it, but it doesn't actually This is not the deep work, right?
Yeah.
The third part of the book is the deep work, and that's the momentum section. Those are all the practices, the mindsets, the tools that enable you to be in a really strong, firm foundation. Because if you are successful, and I know most of your listeners, most of the people that engage with this content are driven and successful, it's normal for imposter syndrome to pop up. So let's not let it derail us, right? Because that's where it robs you of the success that you've actually earned. So the book came from years of working with leaders and seeing this pattern of people like in those quiet moments saying, can I be honest with you? Like, I really feel like someone's going to find out that I am not that smart. And I was like, this is so strange. And I would like go on my computer. This is like 15 years ago. And I'm like, can people lose their edge? Can people lose their, smarts? Like, do we
Yeah.
ever revert back?
Yeah.
And of course, like, not really, right? Unless you have
Yeah.
an actual medical condition.
Yeah.
And so I would just start researching and I found the term, I found where it came from, how it shows up for people. But why I got so motivated to write the book was I found a lot written about what imposter syndrome is. I did not find a lot of concrete things that were actually usable in terms of like, how do you fight it?
Mhm.
And it was advice like fake it till you make it and things like that. And that just doesn't cut to the core. And so
No.
as I was coaching and working with people, they were sharing with me and we were trying some things, right? We were testing things out. Like, did this make a difference? Did that make a difference? And so, yeah, over the years, I just have collected, this like piles of notes and thoughts, and then I'd research a little bit more, and then I develop some exercises for people. And pretty soon I was like, I think this might be a book. Like, I think
Yeah.
this might be a book, and maybe I could share it with other people, who are interested. And it's just been fantastic. It's just been fantastic to be able to share it with people, and to have people, like I said, send me a note with a picture of their sticky note and what's their thing that has been a game changer for them. And that's not me. What I did was I consolidated things and I shared them and I offered them
Yeah.
in a connected way. That
Yeah.
was me. And if that serves people, if that helps them, if that helps them find their thing that fights imposter syndrome, like, amazing. Sign me up
Yeah.
all day, every day. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been amazing having you on the show. You are just a wealth of wisdom, and I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was easy and it flew by, and I feel so exposed that I talked about my fingernails, but I'm
Oh, no, I appreciate you sharing it.
I'm glad that we could. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Empowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.